Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN senior NBA insider, set to join us. And Woj, on the clock yesterday, was set to join us, and all of a sudden he sends a note to Fritzy saying, can't do it. Got some breaking news here. So then moments later, 2 minutes later, I see, Woj is reporting this is the new format, 22 teams. And Woj joins us, unless a story breaks, and then you'll leave us again, Woj. But thank you for coming back. Explain the information, the story that you broke yesterday.
Hey, Dan. Essentially, the format that we had been reporting on that was headed toward today's vote with the league's owners, the Board of Governors, had been presented formally to the owners, which is a 22-team format in Orlando, 5 teams from the West, 1 from the East, in addition to the 16 teams that were already slotted in the playoffs, and then a play-in tournament. I heard you. You've got to read it a couple times to get how that works. But essentially,
Yes.
You're going to play out. You're going to have 8 regular season games, I'm told. And at the end of those 8 regular season games, if the 9th seed is inside of 4 games out, then they have a play-in tournament. If he's 4.5 games or 5 games out, then the 8th seed goes on to the playoffs.
Okay. Is it going to be East and West designation, or are we all under one roof here?
It will be East and West. And there was some conversation around the league about making it a 1 through 16. But I think in the end, what part of the decision making, I was told with Adam Silver, was that to change that in the middle of a season when, for example, teams built their rosters to compete with teams in their conference and to compete there, and then to all of a sudden change that didn't seem to be. It was too dramatic and sudden of a change, and they kept it in the 2 conferences, East and West.
The home court advantage, the higher seeds. What is the commissioner? It felt like there were quite a few things on the table here. Dave McMenamin of ESPN had some of those, but what is real in giving the higher seeds a so-called home court advantage?
Well, they'll get to wear their white jerseys.
Yay!
I think maybe they'll get to decide what color they wear. I do not believe there is any appetite anywhere in the NBA outside of perhaps the Lakers and the Bucks, the 2 top seeds in each conference, to give those teams an advantage. So I think they'll go to Orlando. They'll compete like everybody else. Maybe there'll be a better parking spot for their star player at the Grand Floridian. But other than that, they're going to have to win straight up.
Why late July? Why will it take that long?
Well, part of it is getting the teams back into market, quarantined, and then the time it's going to take to get them back into shape. They're not going to just put them into a training camp. It's going to be essentially a couple weeks of individual training, similar to what they've been doing in these voluntary workouts. But the league and there's medical science people are uneasy about the idea of going to full contact 5-on-5 regular practices at the team's sites when the players aren't going to be living in a bubble environment. They worry in that way. They want them to still be distanced at that time until they get to Orlando. And so part of the conversation, Dan, with the teams is, well, then let's get to Orlando sooner and maybe do more of our training camp there when we can run it like a real practice. They're very concerned about injuries, soft tissue injuries, the things that happen when you're off and you get thrown back in, because they don't want just this season to keep this season from being impacted, but next season. You don't want injuries that, let's say the Blazers come back and maybe they don't make the playoffs. Maybe they don't get in the play-in or win, but you don't want Damian Lillard getting injured or Yusuf Nurkic to come back and get hurt again because you haven't done what's needed in camp time. And so that's what is going to ultimately, make people look and go, geez, this thing seems like it should start sooner. But that's a big consideration to give the players the time they need.
I know the Christmas that the NBA loves its Christmas schedule, and if you're looking at how this season is going to impact next season, best guess of when next season would start?
Dan, I would be really surprised if it started later than Christmas Day. That's such an important day for television, for the league, the idea of being dark on Christmas Day and not having NBA games, I don't think that's an option the league really wants to consider. But certainly, if the NBA Finals right now were to go to a seventh game based on the schedule that they've uh, lined up and that they've shared with the teams, I was told October 12th would be the final date. And so if you're a team in the NBA Finals, or even a team that goes to the conference finals, that's a pretty quick turnaround to starting camp, let's say around maybe right after Thanksgiving, a month of camp. But you've also been off for a long time. Your off season is kind of now. You're coming back. You're going to play for a burst of time here, and then come back with a shortened start of next season. But it will put the league on a different trajectory by starting in late December, where it's going to take you again through the summer months next year to finish a season.
Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN senior NBA insider, his podcast, The Woj Pod. The Zion factor here, Woj. Is there a Zion factor of getting him at least on the periphery of the playoffs?
Well, I think there's no question that he is a star. He's been a star attraction very quickly in the league. I think you could make the argument that if New Orleans was where Phoenix was, 5.5 games back, I think you could make the argument, hey, they're really reaching to get New Orleans and Zion in this tournament. But the fact that New Orleans was just 3.5 games back, along with the Blazers and Trailblazers, I think that is, while I'm sure that they love the idea, it doesn't look as though, or it doesn't appear as though they had to sort of, bend backwards to make it happen. I think there's more of a case that maybe the teams at number 21 and 22, Washington and Phoenix, they're right on the border of being able to make a compelling argument that they still were playoff contenders.
How is the NBA going to decide which members of the media get to cover these games?
I have no idea. Of all the questions I've asked, that has not been one I've tried to waste my bullets on or spend much time on. I don't know what that'll look like. I do know this. They really want to limit who's in that campus bubble environment. And I think what it might also be, Dan, there might be different layers of people. There might be like a group, like one phase that does have daily interaction with players. That would be pretty limited. And then another group that's maybe on the periphery, and then another group that's just within Disney but not around the gym. I think it may look something like that. But in terms of broadcasters, those announcers being on site, I don't have an answer as to how they're going to do that, whether they're going to be in the building, whether they're going to be doing it from their homes or from a studio somewhere. But it's certainly going to be those will start to be more of the questions I think asked as we dig deeper into the details here and we get past the vote today.
I cringe when I hear this, that there'll be an asterisk by whoever wins this title. And my point is, there's only an asterisk if the Lakers win this. This is the LeBron factor that if the Greek Freak wins a title, nobody's attaching an asterisk by this. Or if, Kawhi wins another one. It's just, LeBron is so polarizing here that, hey, that doesn't really count as a full championship. I'm just waiting for these talking points, Woj, of... Yeah, LeBron, he won a title. The whole season has an asterisk by it. But it feels like if LeBron wins a title, that he'll have an asterisk by it.
See, I actually think it might be just the opposite of that, Dan, that I think if one of the teams that was considered the favorite, a team that's a one seed potentially in the West, if they hold on to that, I think that there'll be more legitimacy if it's the Lakers or the Clippers or Milwaukee. But if a team that's maybe was in that next tier wins and it feels fluky to people, because typically in the NBA, you know this, Dan, the best team almost always wins. That's not true in the NCAA tournament. That might not be true in football where it's a one game, but in a best of 7, the best team wins. And I think if it's one of the teams that are in that 2, 3, 4, how many do we want to put in it?
Yeah.
I think it has more legitimacy than, let's say, a next tier team jumps up and gets hot and steals the title and wins it. I think that's would actually be more of a team that might be seen less than legitimate.
I can't make you a programmer at ESPN because you don't understand programming, Woj. You got to have clicks. You got to have hot takes. You're not getting a hot take if the 76ers win the title. Come on, you and your journalism here. How dare you? You got to Skip Bayless is saying, what's wrong with you, Woj? Don't you understand? It's got to be about LeBron all the time.
Well, listen, it's going to be, there's no question that I think the star power of this summer is going to have to carry the league, because you're going to have an environment like, here's what I'm curious about, Dan. I think the basketball junkies, you're going to watch, I'm going to watch the casual fan who gets brought into the finals or the conference finals, who, increases your audience exponentially that time of year. I do wonder how the environment around the game impacts. I mean, here LeBron makes some incredible play and the Bucks call timeout, and normally the place would be going crazy. And is everyone just going to quietly walk to the huddle and the timeout? And I do wonder. And so, and I do think the league's going to account for that. I think there's going to be some bells and whistles around the environment, and some of it may have to be manufactured. It's going to be really interesting to see what it looks and feels like in the arena, in these games. Summer league games in Orlando, we've had those for years. And I mean, you could literally listen to a guy could be shooting a free throw, Dan. And if you were listening close enough on NBA TV, you could hear like two GMs in the corner talking about a trade. And so it was not a electric environment.
I thought you were going to say you could listen. If you listen closely enough, you could hear the guy's heartbeat at the free throw line. But are we doing it's best of 7 throughout for every series?
Best of 7. And that was one of, in the terms of what you're talking about, Dan, in having legitimacy and crowning a champion that people were going to take seriously. I know that was an important priority for Adam Silver, that whatever led up to the finals, or the playoffs, I should say, regular season games and then play in, that the tournament itself, the playoffs, needed to be best of 7. And listen, you're asking for trouble if you have a first round series that's best of 5. Like, if you want to see the Lakers get upset or the Bucks to get upset, make the other team only have to win 3 games. And so to me, it never made sense. If you wanted to be sure the best team advanced, don't have a shortened series.
Woj, great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks,
we appreciate your time. That's
okay.
We recommend Polynesian Village for you.
Oh, the Wilderness Lodge. I remember reporting out the 2011 lockout at 4 a.m. in the lobby because my family was sleeping. That's my great visiting memory.
Thank you, Woj.
Some more.
That's Adrian Wojnarowski, the ESPN senior NBA insider, and his podcast is the Woj Pod.